and welcome back to the kitchen. Today I'm going to be making coconut macaroons, which is a type of cookie. And our ingredients are unsweetened coconut flakes, sugar, kosher salt, but all I have is pink salt, so I'm going to use that instead. Almond extract, which is what I'm using. The original recipe calls for vanilla, but I like the almond extract better. Also, some slivered almonds. That is optional. And two other optional things are cocoa powder and chocolate chips. And also the first ingredient we need to start with, which is the eggs. Alright, this recipe calls for separated eggs, so that means we need to separate the yolk from the white. I like to do that using a spoon. You can also use, there's a special invention called an egg separator. I don't have one of those, so I'm using a spoon. Okay, and what I've just gotten ready here is the bowl that I'm going to put the egg whites in, which is what I'm using for my recipe, is the egg whites. And it's calling for 3 large egg whites. And I have a separate container here for the yolks, which I do not need for this recipe. I'm going to save them for later, for something else. And I have here my compost container that I'm going to put my shells in. Okay, you can see the white is dripping out on its own, but it kind of gets stuck. There you go. Okay, and then I'm putting the yolk onto the spoon to catch it. Then I'm putting my finger here and I'm just tipping the spoon a little bit to get the last of the yolk out. Excuse me, to get the last of the white to drip into the bowl. But be very careful not to poke the yolk or it will break and you'll get yolk into your egg whites. Okay, now I'm putting the yolk into my separate container down there. The reason why you can't have any yolk getting mixed into your whites is because if you do, you won't get the same chemical reaction that you're supposed to get when the whites and the sugar get beaten together. Okay, safe. Okay, and I just washed my hands because I was touching the raw eggs. And if you did accidentally break a yolk and get it in there, you'd have to start it all over again with a fresh, clean bowl, clean spoon. So if you are kind of afraid you're going to mess up, you might want to use a separate bowl and put each individual white in it and then dump it into your actual bowl and just do it one at a time like that, so you don't have to worry about messing up your entire batch of whites. calls for 3 large egg whites, 1 cup of cane sugar, which just means regular sugar. Okay, and when you scoop it out, if you don't know this already, then you want to level it off. I always use the flat side of a knife to level it. Okay, so now it's level. That's 1 cup. Okay, now we're going to whisk together the sugar and the egg whites. So let me get my mixer. If you want to get some extra exercise, you could do this by hand. I'm going to do it with my mixer. Okay, I just whisked it together till it's really well whisked and a little bit fluffy looking, and it's completely mixed together. Okay, now it says to add in the coconut. And we need 3 cups of unsweetened shredded coconut. Just make extra sure that you double check that it says unsweetened, because a lot of times what you see in stores most often is the sweetened. I mean, if you want it to be extra super sweet, you could, but I don't really like my desserts to be super sweet. Now, you don't really have to be that exact with this, but you only just have to keep in mind that the sugar and egg white mix is like the glue that's going to hold everything together. So if you get in too much other dry ingredients in there, it will be too much for the glue to stick it together. So you want to stick pretty much to the amount of dry ingredients that they call for. There is still some room for variation. Like, for example, this recipe calls for 3/4 cup of slivered almonds. You can also mix in chocolate chips if you want to. Just make sure, I would make sure you don't really put in that much more than 3/4 cups extra mix-ins total. Otherwise, your macaroons will start to fall apart because there won't be enough glue to hold all that stuff together. What I'm actually going to do, since I have so few chocolate chips left, is I'm going to later on melt them with some of this butter and make a drizzle that I'm going to put on top. Ooh, that butter is squishy. Okay, let's put that back in the refrigerator for now. I'm going to make this one just a little bit less, since the other one was a little bit more. Okay, and the last cup. Sorry about that. Alright, so now we're going to put in our coconut, and next comes our almonds. I think this is probably... Okay, so that was slightly less than half a cup, and it calls for 3/4. So we're good on that. But the extra thing that I am going to switch up a little bit is I'm going to make mine be a chocolate version, so I'm going to put cocoa powder in. Usually if I'm just experimenting and I'm not sure how much cocoa powder, I just do about 1/4 cup and see how it looks. I did do this once before actually, but I don't really remember what I did. I think it was 1/4 cup. Okay, and then finally we need our salt and our extract. So it's calling for 1/2 teaspoon of the salt. This is the kind that doesn't open, so I'm just going to put some of the salt in this and then measure it from that. Okay. And it calls for 1.5 teaspoons of the extract. I have 1/2 teaspoon, so I'm going to do 3 of them to equal 1.5. Alright, now we can just mix this together. We don't need a mixer for, I mean, you didn't need it for the first thing, unless you wanted to. But for this, we definitely don't need a mixer. You can just use a spatula. And it looks like the 1/4 cup is going to be plenty to make it really chocolatey. Okay, so now it's time to make our macaroons. Okay, so we're going to put little balls of this mixture onto our baking sheet, about 2 tablespoonfuls at a time, which I don't really measure. We're just going to use a spoon. That should be about 2 tablespoons. If it ends up being too big later, we can always adjust it. And I'm putting them on my baking sheet like this, so they're spaced about maybe 2 inches apart. Okay, so that's the first one. We do have to do a little bit more to this, but we're going to come back to that in a second. And I did forget to tell you that I have parchment paper on my baking sheet. Parchment paper is just really good for baking. If you don't know what it is, it comes in this package like this. You tear it off the right size for your sheet and put it on top of your baking sheet. If you want to buy it is normally in the same place as the tin foil and the wax paper, but a lot of times it's on the bottom shelf, so you have to look carefully to find it. We are going to need this later, so I'm just going to rinse it off and save it. get your hands a little bit wet with not hot water, with cool water. Because we need to use damp hands to take each little ball of macaroon mixture and squeeze it into a tight ball. And if you start to notice that it's really sticking a lot, it's time to rinse off your hands again and start over. Okay. Alright, so now, if you don't already know this, a macaroon is in a little pyramid shape. It's like that. So now we have to make that shape with our spatula. And I'm going to try and make this so you can see it. Okay. So we're going to take our spatula and press it first against one side, against another side, against another side, against another side, and see, you're pressing it at an angle, so you're forming this little pyramid shape, see? So press each little lump of batter 4 times on each direction, north, south, east, and west, and make sure you're always angling it each time so that you're forming this little pyramid shape. Sort of press it between your hand and the spatula like that. Okay, so now we need to have a 350 degree oven, and I'm going to stop and wait for that to heat up and clean up a little bit. Okay, my oven is now heated to 350 degrees, so I'm going to put these in for about 15 minutes. Yes, 15 to 18 minutes. It does say to switch the racks halfway through so that they get baked evenly. A lot of times I find I can get away without switching them in between, but you want to keep an eye on it, and it's going to depend on your oven. So I'm going to put them in. And we're going to be back in 15 to 18 minutes. Okay, so I did end up leaving them in for about 15 minutes, and then they looked pretty much done, but I switched the racks and let them in for a few more minutes just in case. And then the recipe says to let them cool like this for 5 minutes. Then you're supposed to take them off and put them onto your wire rack to cool the rest of the way. And the last tray is still in the oven. It's almost finished. While we're waiting for that, let's start the chocolate that we're going to drizzle over top. Okay, so I have a bowl that can go in the microwave, and I'm going to put my chocolate in that. And get my butter again. I see maybe a 1/4 tablespoon. Okay, now I'm going to put it in the microwave for just 30 seconds because chocolate can burn really easily. So if you're not sure, just try it for a really short time, no longer than 30 seconds. And then stir it. Take it out, stir it, check on it. Because you really don't want to burn your chocolate. Okay, that looks about right, so I'm going to stir that. Okay, you can see that as you're stirring it, the chips are going to melt the more you stir. So that's why you don't want to overheat it, because even after you take it out, they're going to melt more just with their own heat that's trapped inside them. Alright, so we're going to put it back in for 15 seconds. Okay, that's just right. Alright, so now I'm going to take the macaroons that are cooling on the rack, and I'm going to put them on a sheet of wax paper. Oh, I am out of wax paper. Never mind, I'm going to put them on a sheet of tin foil. They're still a little warm on the inside, and they're not totally cool. So I'm putting the sheet of tinfoil back on the rack so they can still get air circulating to cool them off the rest of the way. Okay, I don't know if you can see very well. Okay, this isn't really that drizzly, so it's going to be more like spreading it on instead of drizzling it. So I think these are ready to taste. That's really good. So here's the finished one. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed joining me in the kitchen today, and I think these turned out really good. I'm happy with them. After these cool for a few more minutes on here, I'm going to put them on the wire rack, and then you should let them cool for a full 20 minutes after that before you put them away in an airtight container. If you did do the version with the chocolate on top, you might want to put them in a container with a lid rather than just dumping them in a plastic bag, because obviously you don't want the topping to get messed up. Alright, enjoy and see you next week. And if you have any ideas of things that you want me to make next, please leave a comment. Bye!